The night side of the research station drifted in silence above a distant blue moon, its metal hull glimmering softly under the light of faraway stars. Inside, everything was calm. The crew went about their routine, analyzing mineral samples, scanning nearby signals, logging reports for Earth Command. For them, it was just another peaceful shift in the outer edges of human space. The station wasn't large. It was more like a floating laboratory, built to study life forms and energy patterns near the Andromeda frontier. Around 40 scientists, engineers, and technicians lived there, far from the noise of civilization. They joked that they were humanity's quiet watchers, the explorers who looked into the darkness so others didn't have to. Among them were young researchers, tired engineers, and a few veterans from earlier deep space missions. Life out there wasn't easy. Long days, isolation, and constant maintenance on systems that always seemed one glitch away from failure. But they all shared one thing: pride in representing humanity on the frontier. That night, something strange appeared on their long-range sensors. At first, it looked like static interference, a flicker of energy on the radar. The communications officer frowned and adjusted the calibration. Still there. It was moving fast, coming from deep space. She reported it calmly, expecting it to be a rogue asteroid or an unregistered mining craft. Within minutes, the object grew larger on the display. Its energy readings were unfamiliar. No transponder code, no response to hails, no known design pattern. The chief engineer leaned over her shoulder and whispered, "That's not one of ours." The station commander, a calm and steady man who had seen dozens of oddities in space, ordered a visual scan. The display flickered, then showed a blur of metallic shapes moving in formation. Not one, but several objects, sleek, angular, and fast. They were closing in. He immediately opened a wideband transmission. "Unidentified vessels, this is Human Research Station Theta 7. You are entering a restricted exploration zone. Please identify yourselves." No reply. Seconds passed, then a cold signal broke through the static, a strange pulsing rhythm, like digital noise but with a deliberate pattern. It wasn't language. It was a warning. Or maybe a declaration. Inside the control room, the team exchanged uneasy looks. They had never encountered an alien signal before. Earth had made peaceful contact with a few species decades ago, but nothing like this. No translation software could decode it. The commander tried again, this time switching to universal distress frequencies. "Unknown vessels, we come in peace. We are a civilian facility." "Repeat, civilian facility." The lights flickered. External cameras captured a flash near the edge of the moon's orbit. Bright, brief, and followed by silence. The radar blipped out. Then all systems went dark. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the emergency lights came on, bathing the room in red. "Power disruption in sectors 2 through 4, said a voice over the intercom. The commander ordered a full systems check, but it was already too late. Through the observation window, they saw it. A massive ship appeared from the shadows, dark silver covered in jagged armor, far larger than anything human engineers had ever built. Its surface shimmered with alien energy. Around it, smaller craft swarmed like metallic insects. The communications officer whispered, "Who are they?" No one knew. The commander stared at the screen. "Send a distress signal to Earth," he said firmly. "Now." The technician pressed the button. The signal burst out into space, a cry for help traveling across light years. They could only hope someone would hear it. What followed was confusion, fear, and disbelief. The alien vessels moved closer, surrounding the station in a silent formation. The crew watched as the larger ship extended a beam of light that scanned their structure, almost like it was studying them. Some thought maybe it was an inspection, an attempt to communicate. Others felt something darker, a sense that they were being judged. Then the beam flickered again and everything turned white. When the transmission finally reached Earth, it was already too late. The distress signal ended abruptly after only 32 seconds. The final frame sent back to Earth Command showed the research station breaking apart, fragments drifting into the void. No life signs detected. For days, Earth's leadership tried to confirm what had happened. Many believed it was an accident, a reactor malfunction or asteroid collision. But when they analyzed the sensor data, they found traces of unknown energy signatures. They were not natural. They were not human. And then came the message. A transmission appeared across multiple frequencies used by the outer colonies, a distorted voice, translated roughly by AI systems. It came from the Dravak Dominion, an empire few had heard of until that day. The message was clear and cruel. The human outpost has been eliminated. Let this serve as a warning to all primitive species who trespass on Dravak territory. That one broadcast was enough to ignite something deep within humanity. The footage of the destroyed research station spread like wildfire across every colony network. People watched in silence as images of the wreckage filled the screens. Mothers cried. Veterans clenched their fists. Engineers and miners stopped working, staring in disbelief at what they saw. In one moment, fear spread. In the next, something stronger replaced it: unity. For centuries, humans had fought among themselves. But this was different. This wasn't politics, power, or territory. This was survival. The message had insulted not just a nation, but an entire species. The phrase repeated itself across millions of feeds, whispered by angry voices and determined hearts. They attacked us first. Governments that once argued now stood side by side. The Earth Council held an emergency session that lasted through the night. Every major colony sent delegates, even those who had been neutral for decades. There were no borders now, no disagreements about policy. There was only one decision to make: how humanity would respond. In the Great Assembly Hall, a silence filled the air as the Earth Council's representative addressed the crowd. His words were simple, but they struck deep into every listener's heart. "We have been explorers, builders, and dreamers," he said. "But today, we are reminded that not every species shares those dreams. They have taken lives, our people, our scientists, our future. And they celebrated it. They think humanity will hide, that we will beg for mercy." He paused, letting the silence speak for itself. Then his voice grew stronger. "They have made a mistake. They attacked the wrong species." Across Earth and its colonies, people cheered. Not out of hatred, but out of resolve. The kind of resolve that builds ships faster, trains harder, and stands taller in the face of fear. Back in the dark reaches of space, the fragments of the research station still drifted silently, circling the blue moon that had once been their home. The wreckage carried no sound, no motion, only the echo of human courage. It was a symbol now, a reminder of what had begun that night. Humanity was not the strongest, nor the oldest, nor the most advanced race in the galaxy, but they had something no other species could match: a spirit that refused to surrender. And somewhere in the quiet corners of Earth's orbit, the first warships began to awaken from their long rest. Engineers fueled reactors, soldiers prepared, and families watched from home, knowing that the universe had just changed forever. The stars, once a symbol of curiosity and peace, had become something else entirely: a frontier of vengeance and justice. The message that had begun as a boast from the Dravak would soon be remembered as the spark that united a species. Because when they destroyed that station, they didn't just attack a group of scientists. They attacked all of humanity. When the news of the destroyed research station reached Earth, the world changed overnight. Every news channel, every broadcast, and every colony transmission carried the same breaking story. The footage was replayed again and again, the last few seconds of the station, the static, the silence that followed. For most people, it was the first time they truly realized that humanity was not alone in the universe, and that not everyone out there came in peace. At first, people were shocked. Then the shock turned into disbelief. How could anyone attack a peaceful research post? They weren't soldiers or fighters. They were scientists studying distant worlds. There had been no warning, no communication, nothing that could justify what had happened. Families of the crew gathered outside government offices demanding answers. Social feeds filled with messages of grief and anger. Across the colonies, candles were lit in memory of those who were lost. But beyond the sorrow, something else began to grow: determination. For the first time in decades, the different branches of humanity, Earth, Mars, the lunar settlements, and the outer colonies spoke with one voice. Old rivalries and political debates suddenly felt meaningless. The human race had been challenged by an enemy that didn't see them as equals, only as intruders or prey. That single truth united billions in a way that no treaty ever could. In the Grand Assembly Hall of the United Human Fleet Command, hundreds of representatives gathered. The atmosphere was tense but focused. No one shouted. No one argued. Every person there understood that the time for speeches was over. The time for action had begun. The council's speaker addressed the room with calm authority. Our people were attacked without cause. The Dravak Dominion has declared us inferior and treated our lives as nothing. We will not answer hate with hate, but we will not remain silent while our citizens are destroyed. A quiet murmur filled the hall. The speaker continued, "We will defend our kind. We will protect our borders, and we will remind the galaxy that humanity is not weak." Those words marked the beginning of what history would later call Operation Iron Resolve. Across every human world, recruitment centers filled with volunteers. Some were experienced soldiers, but many were civilians, miners, engineers, pilots, and technicians who had never held a weapon in their lives. They didn't come out of love for war. They came because they couldn't stand by while someone else decided their fate. Shipyards that once built cargo freighters were converted overnight into military factories. Massive orbital platforms above Earth began to hum with life again. Old ships that had been retired for decades were reactivated, repaired, and upgraded with new weapons and defenses. The rhythm of industry changed from trade to preparation. In the deserts of Mars, young pilots trained inside flight simulators from dawn until the red sun set. On the icy colonies of Europa, engineers worked sleepless nights designing armor plating that could withstand alien energy weapons. And on the moon, families gathered to watch live broadcasts of the fleet being assembled, their faces filled with both fear and pride. In one of the main training stations orbiting Earth, an officer addressed a group of new recruits. "We are not fighting for conquest," he said. "We are fighting to make sure no one ever thinks they can destroy us again. We are fighting so our children can look at the stars without fear." Every recruit understood. Humanity wasn't starting a war, they were answering one. Meanwhile, scientists and analysts worked day and night studying every bit of data from the attack. They discovered that the Dravak Dominion controlled a massive region of space, filled with dozens of militarized worlds. Their technology was advanced, but in a different way. They relied heavily on energy weapons and shields, believing that kinetic projectiles like bullets and rail cannons were primitive. That mistake would soon cost them dearly. Human engineers began to rebuild with this knowledge in mind. They focused on what the Dravak underestimated: human creativity and adaptability. Instead of copying alien designs, they built ships based on human strengths: simplicity, power, and precision. They developed new versions of rail cannons that could launch metal slugs faster than light. They created missile systems that could split into dozens of smaller warheads mid-flight. They built defense fields that reacted to incoming fire like living armor. But above all, they built something that would become the symbol of Earth's unity: the Titan-class dreadnought. These ships were enormous, capable of carrying thousands of crew and armed with enough firepower to challenge entire fleets. Yet they were more than machines. To those who saw them rise from the shipyards, they were hope made of metal. During the fleet's preparation, an old saying began to spread among the workers and soldiers. "They thought we were small. They'll soon learn how big our spirit truly is." In homes across the solar system, families sent messages to their loved ones who had joined the fleet. Some messages were tearful goodbyes. Others were filled with pride and faith. Parents told their children stories of old explorers who once sailed into the unknown, reminding them that courage was in their blood. As the weeks passed, the first units of the United Human Fleet began to assemble in high orbit. Thousands of ships, from small patrol vessels to massive carriers, formed patterns across the sky like a new constellation. The sight was breathtaking. Reporters from every world broadcast live images of the moment the fleet completed formation. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with awe. In that stillness, a single message was transmitted across all human channels, broadcasted from the flagship of the new fleet. The voice was steady, calm, and full of strength. "We go not to destroy, but to defend. We go not for vengeance, but for justice. They attacked the wrong species." The phrase echoed across every colony and city. It was repeated in schools, in marketplaces, in crowded transport stations. It became a promise, a vow that humanity would not be victims again. As the fleet prepared to depart, people gathered on rooftops and in open fields to watch the skies. From Earth's surface, the ships appeared as streaks of light rising toward the stars. Children waved, families saluted, and the elderly whispered prayers. For once, everyone felt connected, not by fear, but by pride. Back at the shipyards, the engineers stood quietly as the final ships launched. Many of them had tears in their eyes. They had poured their hearts into these vessels, knowing that each one carried not just weapons, but dreams. The dream of a future where humanity could stand tall in the galaxy. Meanwhile, in deep space, the Dravak Dominion remained confident. They believed their earlier victory had proven their superiority. Their leaders saw humanity as little more than an annoyance, a young race trying to play at war. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't understand what they had awakened. As the last of the Titan-class dreadnoughts left Earth's orbit, the commander of the fleet sent a private message to every ship. It was only a few words long, but it carried the weight of an entire civilization. We fight for those who never came home. The fleet turned toward the stars. Engines roared softly as thousands of ships accelerated into the darkness, their lights fading one by one until they were gone from sight. Back on Earth, the world seemed quieter. The people who remained carried on their lives, holding on to the belief that those ships represented something far greater than war. They represented the human will, the ability to rise after loss, to rebuild after tragedy, to stand united when everything seems lost, and somewhere, beyond the silence of space, the Dravak Dominion continued to expand, unaware that the next signal they received from the humans would not be a message of peace. It would be the sound of arrival. Because when humanity comes, they don't come quietly. They come with purpose. They come with unity. They come with the strength of every voice that refused to give up. The universe had taken the first strike. Now humanity was answering, and this time they would not be ignored. The human fleet drifted silently through the cold darkness of space. Thousands of ships glowing faintly in the void moved as one. Every crew member felt the same mixture of fear and strength. They all knew this was it, the first real encounter with the Dravak Dominion. No one wanted war, but they couldn't turn back. Too much had already been lost, and too many were depending on them. The scanners showed hundreds of Dravak warships ahead, positioned like a great wall of steel and light. Their formation stretched across the entire horizon. It was a breathtaking and terrifying sight. The enemy fleet glowed in strange shades of blue and green, their engines pulsing with energy patterns no human had ever seen. It was a reminder that this was not a fight between equals. The Dravak had ruled this part of the galaxy for centuries. Humanity was the newcomer, the unknown challenger. Inside the command rooms, the air was tense. Officers whispered to each other, monitoring every signal and every movement. The humans didn't want to fire first, but the enemy's behavior made it clear they were ready for battle. A message appeared on the communication screen, translated by the system. The Dravak commander's voice filled the room. It was calm but full of arrogance. "Humans," the voice said, "your journey ends here. Surrender your vessels and your people will be spared. Resist and you will be erased from the stars." The room went silent. The crew members looked at their commander, waiting for his response. The message wasn't just a threat, it was an insult. It told them exactly what the Dravak thought of humanity: weak, unimportant, a mistake to be corrected. The commander didn't reply immediately. He stared at the massive wall of alien ships on the screen. Then he spoke just 3 words that echoed through every ship in the fleet. "Hold your course." The fleet moved forward slowly but steadily. The human ships stayed in formation, shields active but weapons silent. The message was clear. They would not retreat, but they wouldn't strike first either. The Dravak ships began to reposition. Their movement looked almost artistic, like a dance of light and geometry. And then, without any further warning, energy beams flashed across the void. The Dravak had fired the first shot. The beams hit the outer line of human ships. Alarms blared and shields flickered under the pressure, but they held. The first strike had come, and humanity had survived it. Inside the flagship, the commander's voice came through the speakers across the fleet, calm and steady. "They've made their choice," he said quietly. Then in a tone that was almost gentle, he added, "Return fire." What followed was a moment the galaxy would never forget. The human ships unleashed their weapons, rail cannons that fired kinetic slugs faster than light, missile systems that split into hundreds of smaller projectiles mid-flight, and plasma lances that shimmered like lightning across space. The silence of the void was broken by waves of energy and streaks of glowing trails, but what made the difference wasn't power. It was creativity. The Dravak had never fought an enemy like this before. Their shields were built to resist directed energy attacks, not physical impacts. When the first human projectiles hit, their defenses cracked. One after another, enemy ships lost control as kinetic rounds tore through their hulls. The Dravak fleet tried to adapt, but it was too late. Human tactics were unpredictable. They used decoys, false signals, and sudden formation changes that confused the enemy's targeting systems. It wasn't just a battle. It was a clash between two ways of thinking. The Dravak relied on precision and order. The humans relied on instinct and flexibility. Inside the ships, every crew member worked with complete focus. Engineers adjusted shield frequencies by hand. Pilots made sharp maneuvers through the chaos. Technicians shouted numbers and recalibrated systems in real time. It was teamwork at its finest, 1,000 people acting as one mind. Through the viewing windows, space looked like a storm of light and motion. Explosions bloomed far away, silent and distant, like stars being born and dying in seconds. And through that chaos, the human fleet kept advancing, pushing deeper into the enemy's line. When the first enemy cruiser fell, cheers erupted across the communication channels. It wasn't celebration for destruction, it was relief. Proof that they could stand against one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. Still, no one relaxed. Every officer knew that a single mistake could turn victory into disaster. The humans fought with precision, avoiding unnecessary damage, targeting only military ships. The goal was never revenge. It was survival. In the command deck of the flagship, the commander watched quietly. His eyes never left the radar screen. He didn't shout or celebrate. He simply whispered to his officers, "Keep moving forward." Hours passed. The once impenetrable Dravak formation began to fall apart. Their ships, built for dominance, were now scattered and confused. The human fleet, smaller but faster and more coordinated, surrounded them from multiple angles. Then something unexpected happened. The Dravak's central ship, a massive command vessel larger than any human dreadnought, sent a signal. It wasn't a threat this time. It was silence. The human sensors detected a sudden drop in energy from the alien fleet. Their weapons stopped firing. The battle slowed, then stopped altogether. For a moment, the stars grew quiet again. The humans held their position, ready for anything. No one dared to celebrate. They had learned enough to know that appearances could deceive. Finally, a new message came through. The translator took a few seconds to process it before displaying the words, "You are stronger than we believed, but you will regret this defiance." The commander didn't answer. He simply looked at the stars outside the viewport and said softly, "We didn't start this." Then he gave the order to regroup. The battle was over. The human fleet had survived and won. The news of the victory spread through space faster than light. Every colony, every settlement, every outpost received the message. People cried, shouted, and embraced. For the first time since the attack on the research station, the universe felt a little safer. But the victory came with a cost. Some ships were damaged, some lives were lost, and many more were still out there, waiting for what came next. The humans knew this was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the footage of the battle was analyzed by experts. Scientists and military officers watched every frame, studying how the Dravak ships moved and reacted. They knew the Dominion would not accept defeat quietly. There would be another encounter, bigger, stronger, and far more dangerous. Still, for that one moment, humanity stood proud. The species that the galaxy once saw as weak had stood up to one of the most powerful empires, known and survived. The commander of the fleet sent a short message back to Earth. It was broadcast across every channel, reaching billions of people at once. Today, we have proven that we are not just explorers or dreamers. We are protectors of our kind. We fight not because we enjoy war, but because peace must be earned. And to those who still doubt humanity's strength, look to the stars. We are there and we are not afraid. The message ended. Across cities and colonies, people stood in silence, their hearts full of pride and hope. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger, more dangerous galaxy, and they had not faltered. In the days that followed, the fleet repaired its ships, honored its fallen, and prepared for what came next. They knew the Dravak would return. Empires never accepted defeat easily, but humanity was ready. They had faced fear and turned it into courage. They had faced destruction and turned it into strength. As the fleet began to move again, deeper into uncharted space, a simple message appeared on every communication screen, a phrase that had now become a legend among the stars. They attacked the wrong species. And for the first time in the galaxy's long history, everyone, friend or foe, understood exactly what that meant. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the fight itself. Space was calm again, yet everyone on the human ships knew that calm didn't mean peace. It meant waiting for what would come next. Inside the flagship, the crew moved quietly, repairing systems, checking damage, and tending to those who had been hurt. The adrenaline that had carried them through the battle was gone now, replaced by a quiet sense of disbelief. They had faced an empire far older and stronger than them, and somehow they had won. Still, no one felt like celebrating. The loss of even one ship was too much. Every pilot, every engineer, every technician was a piece of the same human spirit, and when one was gone, it left an emptiness everyone could feel. The commander stood at the viewing deck, staring into the endless field of stars. He didn't say anything for a long time. Behind him, his officers waited quietly, respecting the silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but thoughtful. "We showed them what humans are made of," he said softly. "But this isn't the end. It's the start of something much bigger." He was right. Across the galaxy, the Dravak Dominion was in chaos. Their leaders couldn't believe that a species from a single blue planet had defeated one of their armadas. The Dravak had fought hundreds of wars over the centuries, but never against someone like the humans. They were used to predictable enemies, but humans didn't fight by rules. They adapted, improvised, and refused to give up. The news spread fast. Other alien species who had long lived in fear under Dravak rule began to take notice. In distant systems, whispers started, stories of humans who stood their ground and survived. Some even began to hope that maybe, just maybe, the Dravak weren't unstoppable after all. Meanwhile, the human fleet returned to a secure orbit near a neutral planet to regroup. Engineers worked day and night, patching hulls and recalibrating shields. Scientists analyzed every piece of data they had gathered from the battle. The humans weren't just fighters, they were learners. Every mistake, every hit they had taken would become a lesson for the next encounter. In the mess halls, the crew sat together, sharing quiet conversations. They talked about home, about Earth's blue skies, the smell of rain, the laughter of children, the cities glowing at night. Those memories reminded them why they were out here in the first place. It wasn't about power or pride. It was about protection, about making sure no one could ever again threaten their world or their people. Even with exhaustion hanging over them, the bond among the crew was unbreakable. They had seen things that no human had ever seen before, faced things no one could have imagined, and come through it together. That unity was their greatest weapon, stronger than any laser or cannon. Back on Earth, the news of the victory reached every corner of the planet. Streets filled with people cheering, crying, waving flags, and lighting up the skies with bright displays. For generations, humanity had looked up at the stars with curiosity. Now they looked up with pride. They weren't just dreamers anymore, they were defenders of their species, but the leaders on Earth knew the truth. This victory would come at a price. The Dravak would not stay silent forever. They would regroup, rebuild, and come back with greater force. Humanity had just entered a much larger game, one that would test every bit of their strength and unity. In the days that followed, meetings took place in every command center across the world. Scientists, military leaders, and diplomats sat together, discussing what would come next. For once, all nations of Earth were united by a common goal. There were no borders in this fight, only one planet, one people standing together. New fleets were being built. Shipyards on the Moon and Mars worked non-stop, constructing faster and stronger vessels. Engineers combined human creativity with alien technology they had salvaged from the battle. The result was something the galaxy had never seen before. Ships designed not just for war, but for endurance and flexibility. As the new fleet took shape, training continued. Young cadets volunteered in massive numbers, not out of glory or pride, but because they wanted to protect their home. The stories of bravery from the first battle had spread across the world, inspiring millions. Meanwhile, deep in space, the surviving Dravak ships limped back to their territory. The Dominion's High Council gathered in their grand chamber, a vast room filled with shimmering lights and alien symbols. The air was thick with anger and disbelief. Their fleets had never been defeated by anyone before. To them, humanity was supposed to be just another primitive species, useful for study, not for war. The Dravak leader spoke in a cold, metallic tone that echoed through the chamber. "They have challenged our authority," he said. "They will learn what it means to defy us." Plans began immediately. The Dominion started building a new armada, one larger than ever before. This time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity. But even as they prepared for revenge, something unexpected was happening among their own ranks. Some Dravak officers began questioning the war. They had seen the courage of the humans firsthand. The way the humans protected each other, the way they fought for something beyond power. It was something the Dominion had long forgotten. A few even began to secretly admire them. Back in human space, the commander received encrypted transmissions from allies, small alien civilizations who had been oppressed by the Dravak for years. They offered information, support, and in some cases safe passage through hidden routes in space. Humanity had become a symbol of resistance, a light in a dark galaxy. The commander and his advisors studied the data carefully. They realized that the Dravak's power wasn't infinite, it relied on fear. If that fear could be broken, their empire could crumble. A new strategy began to form. Instead of waiting for the next attack, humanity would take the initiative, not to conquer but to free, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Every night before the next journey began, the crew of the fleet would gather on the observation deck. They would stand there quietly looking out at the stars. Some saw beauty. Others saw danger. But all of them saw purpose. One of the young officers broke the silence one night. "Do you think we can really change anything out there?" he asked softly. The commander looked at him and smiled faintly. "Maybe not everything," he said, "but enough to matter." That sentence became the unofficial motto of the fleet. Enough to matter. Soon the ships were ready again. Engines roared to life, lights glowed, and the fleet rose from orbit like a rising sun in the darkness of space. Their destination was set, not to attack, but to defend. To show that humanity was not a force of destruction, but of balance. Before they departed, the commander sent one last message to Earth. "We are going back out there, not for war, but for peace through strength. If they come for us again, they will find that humanity does not break. We protect, we endure, we rebuild, and we never forget why we fight." The message was broadcast to every home, every screen, every colony. People across Earth and beyond watched with tears in their eyes as the fleet disappeared into the stars once more. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just surviving in the universe, they were shaping it. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth had become clear to everyone. The age of fear was over. The age of humanity had begun. The war was finally over, but peace didn't come easy. Even after the last Dravak ship surrendered, the silence across the stars felt heavy, like the calm after a long, violent storm. The human fleet hung quietly in orbit above the burned remains of the last enemy stronghold. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They had won, but victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like relief. Inside the flagship, the air was still. The crew sat at their stations, tired and quiet, listening to the low hum of the engines. They had been fighting for months without rest. Each person had seen things they would never forget. But they had also seen something else, something powerful. Humanity's courage had carried them through every dark moment, every loss, every impossible battle. The commander stood near the main screen, watching the planet below. Once it had been a proud capital world of the Dravak Dominion. Now it was silent. Not destroyed, but humbled. The humans hadn't wiped it out. They had chosen mercy. Instead of revenge, they had left behind supplies, medical equipment, and food for the innocent civilians who had suffered under the rule of their own leaders. When the commander gave the order to withdraw, his voice was calm and steady. "We came here to end a war," he said softly, "not to start a new one. We've done what we needed to do. It's time to go home." Those words spread across every ship, echoing in every heart. They had fought for survival, for justice, but now they were ready for peace. The journey back to human space was long. The fleet moved slowly, carrying both pride and exhaustion. Along the way, they passed through systems that had once been controlled by the Dravak. Many alien worlds sent signals of gratitude. Some even called out for help rebuilding. Humanity didn't ignore them. Instead of turning away, the fleet stopped at several planets, leaving behind engineers, medics, and humanitarian teams. The same species that once inspired fear was now bringing hope. It was something new for the galaxy to witness, a species that could fight like thunder, but heal like rain. When the first human ships entered the solar system again, Earth's skies lit up with light. People gathered everywhere, on rooftops, in streets and fields, to watch the glowing streaks in the night sky. News screens across every continent showed the fleet's return. There were no speeches, no parades, just tears, smiles, and quiet pride. Humanity had gone to the stars not for conquest, but for protection, and they had proven themselves worthy of both strength and compassion. Inside the fleet, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. They thought of home, of oceans, forests, cities, families waiting. Many had lost friends, but their memory would live forever in every human heart. The commander sent a message to every corner of human space. We did not fight to dominate. We fought to survive. And now, we will build something better, for us and for every species that chooses peace. That message spread farther than anyone expected. Across the galaxy, species that had once been afraid began to reach out. Some wanted to trade. Others wanted to learn. A few even offered alliances. Humanity had changed the balance of power, not with fear, but with respect. In the following months, human diplomats and scientists worked together to form a new coalition, one not built on control, but cooperation. They invited other civilizations to join, promising that no one would ever be forced into war again. The name of this new alliance was simple: the Accord of Life. For the first time, the galaxy had something close to peace. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, small conflicts, and memories that couldn't be erased. But the foundation had been set. Humanity had shown that strength and mercy could exist together. Still, the commander often sat alone in the quiet of his ship, looking out at the stars. He knew peace would not last forever. The universe was too vast, too unpredictable. But he also knew that humanity was ready for whatever came next. They had learned what it meant to endure. One night, as the ship orbited Earth, a young officer joined him. They stood in silence, watching the planet below, the blue oceans, the white clouds, the golden lights of cities glowing in the dark. "It's beautiful," the officer said quietly. "It always was," the commander replied. "We just had to step away to realize how much it means." The officer turned to him. "Do you think they'll ever come back? The Dravak?" The commander's gaze stayed fixed on the planet. "Maybe," he said softly. "But if they do, they won't find the same humanity they attacked. They'll find one that stands together, one that remembers." The young officer nodded slowly, understanding. Humanity had changed forever. They had seen the worst of war and chosen the best of themselves in return. On Earth, life began to return to normal. Children played under the sun, unaware of how close their world had come to destruction. Scientists studied the technology salvaged from the Dravak warships, using it not for weapons but for exploration and healing. Within years, humanity built faster, cleaner ships, opening new paths across the stars, not for war, but for discovery. In the far reaches of space, some of the smaller Dravak colonies began to rebuild, guided quietly by human aid. The humans didn't ask for thanks or control, they simply helped. That, more than anything, shook the galaxy even more than their victory. The message was clear: humans didn't fight for power. They fought for principle. Decades later, the story of the war became legend. It was taught in schools, told in films, written in books, and whispered across worlds. The phrase that started it all, "You attacked the wrong species," became a symbol of strength, but also of responsibility. Every time a new ship launched from Earth, those words were engraved somewhere on its hull, not as a threat but as a reminder. A reminder that humanity's strength came not from destruction, but from unity and courage. And so, as generations passed, the galaxy began to change. The Accord of Life grew, with more civilizations joining in peace. Together, they built new cities on distant worlds, shared knowledge, and explored the mysteries of the cosmos. But among the stars, one thing never changed: the respect and caution every species held for humans. They had seen what humans could do when pushed too far, and they had also seen what they could do when guided by compassion. Somewhere, far beyond known space, an ancient Dravak fleet still drifted silently. On one of those ships, an old Dravak officer looked out at the stars and whispered to himself, "We attacked the wrong species." And maybe that's how we finally learned. Back on Earth, the commander, now much older, walked along a quiet coastline at sunset. The waves rolled gently against the sand, and the sky glowed orange and red. He looked up at the sky, at the stars now familiar and friendly, and smiled faintly. He remembered everything: the fear, the losses, the moments of courage, and the faces of those who never made it home. But he also remembered the unity, the strength and the humanity that carried them through. A child ran past him laughing, chasing a kite shaped like a spaceship. The commander watched, his eyes softening. The child would grow up in a world free from fear, because of what they had done. He whispered quietly to himself, as if speaking to those who were no longer there. We made it. Humanity made it. As the last light of the sun touched the water, the stars began to appear, bright, endless, and full of new stories waiting to be written. And somewhere out there among those distant lights, the spirit of humanity moved forward, strong, united, and forever remembered as the species that would not bow, would not break, and would never stop reaching for the stars.